Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the sources you send us, try to focus that stream of information, and just get you the purest nuggets of knowledge. I've always been a huge fan of classical mythology.
Oh, me too.
And for me, the real fun is it's the endless discovery. You can spend years, immersed in these traditions, reading all the canonical texts, and you'll still stumble across some minor character you've never heard of.
Right. Or like a strange local version of a hero's tale.
Exactly. And that feeling of finding something new is it's fantastic.
It really is. I mean, the Hellenic world was so vast, and these stories were never, set in stone. They were always being adapted, changed, even contradicted, depending on the...
That's the rewarding part. But lately, that feeling of discovery has been replaced by, a real sense of confusion, almost frustration, really.
Yeah.
And it's all driven by one very, very specific narrative.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. We've seen this story pop up on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all over. And it's not being presented as a what if, it's presented as like undisputed historical fact.
And it's gotten so widespread that people are getting genuinely confused. We've seen them get almost aggressive when traditional sources don't include it.
Right. And that confusion is precisely why we're doing this deep dive today. We're looking into the source material you sent us about this supposed definitive ending to Greek mythology.
And we had to do an exhaustive search. I mean, almost obsessive, because the pressure from people to just confirm this story was huge. We had to know if we were somehow, spectacularly wrong about millennia of scholarship.
So let's just set the stage here. The core claim, the big question we need to answer is this. Is it true that Greek mythology has a definitive cataclysmic ending?
And specifically,
does that ending involve Ares, the god of war, rising up, defeating all the other Olympians, and forcing Zeus to basically cut ties with humanity forever?
Okay, let's unpack this, because just hearing that said out loud it's immensely shocking for anyone who studied this stuff, even casually.
Even in high school, yeah.
We're talking about an ending that involves all the major players, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Athena, all of them being forced to surrender by one of their own.
And then what? Just closing up shop? A permanent boundary between Olympus and Earth.
The sheer scale of a story like that, I mean, it should be in every major ancient text, every Roman retelling, every summary book, and yet...
It seemed to materialize out of the digital ether almost overnight.
It's genuinely astonishing how fast a completely new foundational fact can just, conquer the internet.
And when something that big appears from nowhere, you've got to start looking for the digital footprint, not the historical one.
Exactly.
So let's jump into that. Section 1, the narrative that conquered the internet. I mentioned aggressive comments, and I was not kidding. We've had people in our DMs demanding to know why we haven't covered this definitive ending.
Like you're part of a cover-up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Implying we're deliberately hiding some historical truth. It's wild.
And that kind of reaction, it just says so much about how we consume information now.
Yeah.
Especially when it's packaged so neatly, it gives you this sense of closure.
Totally. And the source material you said has traced it all back to a single It's about 3 years old now.
And it has, over 5 million views?
Over 5 million views.
Yeah.
And that video is clearly the patient zero of this whole myth conception.
It is. But we have to admit, it's a compelling story. It's got a great arc.
Oh, it's a fantastic. Let's walk through the plot of it, because it does feel very satisfying, like a modern blockbuster script.
Yeah.
It all starts with the origin of Ares.
Right. Born to Zeus and Hera. And immediately, the narrative sets up this perfect internal conflict, the kind you need for a good villain. He's cast as the dark opposite of his sister, Athena.
She was all about strategic war, wisdom, peace.
And he was just wanton violence, pure destruction. And so, naturally, none of the other gods liked him, not even his own father, Zeus. It's the perfect, disliked outcast set up for a future rebellion.
And then the story gives us the catalyst. Ares is tired of being the outcast, tired of all the divine meddling, and he decides he's going to terrify the world to show everyone his true power.
To do that, he gathers his allies. And the viral video is very specific. It names 4 companions. Phobos, who is fear.
Deimos, terror.
Eris, strife, and Enyo, another war goddess.
And those names sound so legit because they are real figures from the mythology. They are his retinue.
Exactly. But then the story takes this enormous... It claims Ares and his crew started something called the Great War. They massacred at the lands of Thrace, which is an area, geographic...
His barbaric homeland, basically.
Right. And the description is so visceral. It's designed to sound like some lost epic. It says the conflict was so bad that 3 rivers were full of blood.
That kind of detail is what makes it stick. It's so graphic and memorable.
But the truly huge part, the part that just upends everything, comes next. The Olympians see what Ares is doing, and they declare war on him to stop it.
And they lose.
The viral narrative states very clearly that the Olympians lost and Olympus fell. That's the kick.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the story then kind of pivots to keep Zeus in charge, but not really.
Right, it has to explain why he's king. So even though he lost the war, he didn't lose. Instead, he's forced and humiliating negotiations.
Triumphant god of war.
And Ares has just one condition, one absolute demand, that no god would interfere in the world of mortals ever again.
And Zeus, facing a choice between that or being killed by his...
He accepts. He closes all the doors between Olympus and Earth. And that, according to the video, is the official final end of the mythology.
It's a heck of a story. Like you said,
Yeah.
It's so clean. It provides a single cataclysmic reason why the gods who are all over the Iliad just stop showing up.
It's perfect narrative closure on a silver platter. That feeling, that neat, tidy, satisfying ending, that's what immediately raises a scholar's hackle.
It's too perfect.
Way too perfect for a body of myth that is famously messy, contradictory, and full of holes. Ancient mythologies just don't do that. They fade, they evolve, they get absorbed into other beliefs. They don't usually have a single, clean endpoint.
That skepticism is the perfect lead-in to our next section 2, identifying the misconception. Because when we first saw this, the red flags were they were everywhere.
Everywhere. And red flag number 1 was just the obvious AI footprint.
Oh yeah. Even if you don't recognize the voice, the whole structure of it, the way the story is built, it just screams algorithm. It's designed for maximum engagement, not accuracy.
Absolutely. And that first video, it seems to have started a trend. Dozens of other creators on YouTube and TikTok copy word for word.
Sometimes with their own voiceover, but usually just another AI voice. They just swap out the stock image.
Exactly. And that kind of rapid, cheap imitation, huge tell. It's content being churned out for traffic, not for
Which brings us to a really critical warning about, the internet, right? The danger of using AI for stuff that's supposed to be educational.
AI doesn't have scholarly rigor. It makes mistakes. It copies stuff from other bad sources. And most dangerously, it synthesizes data without checking if any of it is true. It's built to create a story that sounds right, not a story that is right.
It's that Hall of Mirrors effect. The more the fake story gets copied, the more sources an AI has to pull from, so it just reinforces its own lie.
But the second red flag, and for us this was the big one, was the sheer egotistical omission of it all.
This is the question, isn't it? How could we, or anyone who has dedicated their lives to studying this stuff, how could we have never heard of a story this big?
Exactly. This isn't some obscure detail about a local river nymph. This is the supposed ending of the entire myth, the final war that shuts it all down. If it were real, it would be as foundational as the Trojan War.
It helps to think about it with analogies, right? Like imagine studying Norse mythology and somehow missing Ragnarok.
You can't. It's impossible. The twilight of the gods, the great final battle. Even people who've never read the Eddas know about Ragnarok. It's fundamental.
Or what about other traditions? How many people know about the Mayan calendar and the whole 2012 apocalypse thing, even if they've never studied the cosmology?
It's baked into our pop culture knowledge. Or think about Christianity. Could you study Christianity and just completely miss the end of days, the rapture, final judgment?
Of course, they aren't footnotes. They're the conclusion.
So we're supposed to believe that the ending to Greek mythology, one of the most famous, most adapted mythologies in the entire world, is some obscure story that flew under the radar of every single scholar, poet, and historian 2,000 years.
It's just not plausible.
It's not. And the way the video implies you should feel dumb for not knowing it, that's a classic trick to shut down your skepticism.
But still, despite all that, we couldn't just dismiss it. You had that little voice in your head. What if?
What if there's some lost fragment?
Exactly. So with so many people convinced it was real, we had to give them the benefit of the doubt. We had to do the work.
We had to commit to the full, exhaustive deep dive, and that meant hitting the book hard.
Which brings us to section 3, the library deep dive. When you're trying to debunk something this viral, to be so thorough.
You have to check everything. The primary sources, the modern scholarship, the popular retelling, everything.
So we started where most people would start, the modern books.
Yeah.
The accessible stuff, just to see if it was hiding in plain sight.
I even checked the kind of book I had as a kid, the big illustrated one, and all it said was that the mythology sort of faded out of relevance.
Same. I checked the Illustrated Book of Myths, which even has a whole section on endings. Nothing. Mythology book. Big ideas, simply explained. Not a word.
Okay, but those are entry level. So we moved up. We checked the big canonical retellings that have been standard for like a century.
Bullfinch's mythology from the 1850s, not in there. Edith Hamilton's mythology, which is still the gold standard in schools, completely absent.
We checked Sarah Iles Johnston, William Doty, Anthony Horowitz. The silence was It was deafening.
But the most telling indicator, for me at least, was what we started calling the Riordan.
Yeah, Rick Riordan.
Look through all his stuff. Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, the main series. This era's ending is completely total.
And the key here isn't that Riordan is a primary source. It's the contrast.
Exactly. His Norse series, the Magnus Chase books, they talk about Ragnarok constantly. It's the whole point, the driving force of the story.
So if a huge cataclysmic ending existed for Greek myth, beyond a shadow of a doubt, he would have built his entire series around it. It's perfect dramatic tension. The fact that it's not there is huge sign.
We also checked contemporary authors, like Madeline Miller, and Anthony Moe, who has a chapter where Ares himself talks about the future of mankind. You'd think he might mention the one time he beat up all the other gods and saved humanity, right?
But okay, all of those are modern. To really do this, we had to go to the OG, the ancient foundational sources.
This is the most critical step. So where did we start?
Pseudo-Apollodorus' library. It's from the 1st or 2nd century AD, and it's basically the ancient world's encyclopedia of Greek myth. The family trees, the big stories, it's all in there.
Did we find a great war between Ares and Zeus?
Not a whisper, nothing.
Okay, so then we go even further back. Hesiod's Theogony could be from, 800 BC?
Potentially. And the Theogony is the blueprint. It's the authoritative guide to how the gods are related and, more importantly, how Zeus secured his power.
Right. The whole point of the Theogony is that Zeus wins, he beats the Titans, he beats Typhon, and his rule is absolute and unchallenged.
Precise. So an ending where Zeus gets humiliated and defeated by Ares, who Hesiod basically paints as a troublesome son, it would completely invalidate the entire premise of the poem. The silence from Hesiod is deafening.
And then, of course, there's Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey.
Not only is the Ares story apt, but Homer's depiction of Ares makes the whole idea, makes it ludicrous.
He's not exactly a mastermind in the Iliad.
Not at all. He's often portrayed as a bully, kind of a fool. He gets wounded by a mortal, Diomedes, with Athena's help. Zeus literally tells him he's the most hateful god on Olympus. He's not the guy who's going to overthrow the whole system.
We even checked the rest of the epic cycle. The poems that fill in the gaps around the Trojan War, the Kypria, the prequel, and the Telegony, the sequel. Nothing there either.
We even went through the Homeric hymn. And in the hymn to Ares, he's actually described as an ally to mortals who brings blessing. It's one of the kindest depictions of him anywhere, and it directly contradicts the viral story's simple villain.
We even checked the Roman. Do they have a version with Mars?
Nope. Not in Ovid's Metamorph, which is just packed with divine drama, and not in Virgil's Aeneid.
And the Aeneid is a big one. Virgil was trying to create a national myth for Rome. If there was a story where the Greek gods dramatically bowed out, he would have used that to explain the transition to the new Roman order.
He absolutely would have. It would have been the perfect narrative tool. Its absence is critical evidence.
So, after we exhausted all the physical books, we hit the internet.
And that's where the AI loop really shows itself. The only places that mention this Ares story are just quoting the other videos. It's a closed ecosystem of
And crucially, it's not on the trusted sites. It's not on theoi.com, which is meticulously documented. And if a story this big isn't on Wikipedia, that's a serious red flag.
Yeah, that's a big one. The evidence is just conclusive. The story is a modern invention.
So, wait, just to play devil's advocate for a second, what about the Titanomachy or the Gigantomachy? Weren't those huge wars where the Olympians almost lost?
That's a great question. But those wars are fundamentally different. The Titanomachy was a war of succession. Zeus was establishing his rule. The Gigantomachy was about defending that established order.
So in both cases, Zeus wins and his authority is strengthened.
Exactly. The viral Ares story is an internal civil war where Zeus loses and his authority it runs counter to the entire theme of Greek theology. The AI needed a story about surrender, and the Titanomachy just doesn't provide that.
Okay, so the verdict is in. The story is not legitimate, no basis in ancient myth, no basis in modern scholarship. It's brand new.
It is. Which brings us to section 4. How did this happen? How did an AI stitch this myth conception together? Because it really is a Frankenstein's monster of a story.
It's pieced together from modern pop culture, right?
Yeah.
Things an algorithm would see as popular and recent.
100%. The closest parallel, the one that provides the core idea of a rebellious war god, is the backstory in the 2017 one.
Oh, right. In that movie, Ares does go to war with the other gods. He kills a bunch.
The core idea is right there. Ares fights the gods lose, but the details are all wrong. In the movie, Ares ultimately loses to Zeus.
And more importantly, his motivation is the complete opposite.
Exactly. The viral myth says Ares wanted to save humanity by getting the gods to leave them alone. Wonder Woman's Ares wants to destroy humanity by forcing them into endless war. The AI took the plot but flipped the motive to make it sound more noble.
A necessary evil kind of ending.
Yep. So where does the pro-human motive come from? Well, you can look at the comics, specifically the Injustice, Gods Among Us comics.
The dark alternate DC universe.
In one of those storylines, Ares does want to start a war to help humanity evolve, but Zeus forbids it. This creates the conflict where Ares turns his back on Zeus.
So that gives you the motivation piece that was missing from Wonder. But there's still no big war where Olympus falls, right?
Right. Zeus is just trying to maintain the status quo. So you have the conflict from one source, the motivation from another.
And then for the grand finale, the actual war god defeats the god's trope.
Yeah.
You have to look at video.
The God of War series. It's not a direct link, but thematically it's a perfect match. The whole series is about a figure of war and vengeance, Kratos turning against.
And the end of God of War 3 is literally Kratos killing off the Greek pantheon one by one.
It's the ultimate war god defeats gods storyline. The AI wasn't looking for authentic classical myth. It was looking for popular high engagement patterns.
So the conclusion is just, it's unavoidable. Someone probably asked an AI to create a video on the ending of Greek mythology.
And since the real answer is complicated and kind of unsatisfying, it faded out. The AI did what it does best. It went to the most popular sources it could find, which are modern movies and games.
And it blended. It took the war from Wonder Woman, the motivation from Injustice, and the thematic destruction from God of War.
And the result is a perfectly coherent, dramatic, and satisfying story that is a complete and utter fabric. A modern myth conception designed to give us the neat, tidy ending the ancient world never did.
Which brings us to Section 5. The takeaways, and I think the most important part of this whole thing. Why accuracy actually matters.
Well, first, we have to talk about the asymmetry of it all.
The effort.
The effort. The AI generated that story in seconds with one click. To disprove it, we had to go through more than 20 books, watch hours of video.
It's this monumental effort to verify the truth versus almost zero effort to generate a lie. That's the challenge we all face now.
And the question always comes up, right? Why does it matter? They're just made up stories. What's the harm?
It's a fair question.
It is. But these stories, they're fundamental parts of a culture, a history. And there's a real need, I would argue, to portray that culture accurately, to reflect how people actually believed and lived. It's a form of cultural respect.
And there's a huge difference between adaptation and education.
A massive difference. Taking liberties to make a fun video game or a movie is great. We love God of War, we love Wonder, but we know they're not prime.
The problem is when you present this fabricated story as what actually happened, as education, that's when you're just spreading these myth conceptions.
Because we value learning what people actually thought thousands ago, not what an algorithm thinks is the most clickable version of their belief.
So the key lesson for anyone listening is just, it's critical thinking. It has to.
Always. If a story sounds too perfect, if it wraps up a messy history in a neat little bow, you have to check your source. Multiple foundational.
And when it comes to AI-generated content that's pretending to be history,
you have to take it with a grain of salt. Or, as our source material put it, maybe a whole bag of salt.
The algorithm's goal is virality, not accuracy. It's on us to do the verification.
It really is. It forces us to question the source, especially when the source is the internet trying to fill a historical gap with a clean, modern story arc.
A clean story arc that, in this case, just never existed.
Never existed. So, to summarize our central finding one last time, the viral story of Ares defeating the Olympians is a modern, algorithmically generated fabrication.
It's a Frankenstein's monster of a myth pieced together from pop culture.
And it has absolutely no basis in ancient literature or rec scholarship.
It's a pretty fascinating, if a little scary, case study in how fast AI can create a false historical consensus just by giving people the satisfying.
It is. And we know the real ending was catastrophic war. It was, as the scholars suggest, a gradual fading out of relevance. That still leaves a pretty big question.
The real end.
If Greek mythology really did just fade away, what factors do you think finally closed the doors on Earth? Was it the rise of Christianity offering a more centralized, exclusive faith?
Or was it philosophy?
Yeah.
You know, the rise of rationalism, which made divine intervention seem a lot less plausible.
Or was it something else entirely? A slow societal shift that just made those dramatic, violent, and often petty gods feel less and less necessary in daily lives?
Now that's a deep dive for your own research.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.